I think it is, but let's go see our history first.
Okay.
So,
I feel like I'm on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood right now. Let's go take a visit down there. You know, let's say, hey, kids, let's go meet so-and-so down there on the corner and learn about this.
All right, I get it.
It has been a minute, but Auburn is back in a bowl game, folks. Yes, we have not had a lot of success over the last few years, much less being in one, but it is still exciting to be talking about Auburn football in a bowl game. This time, the Music City Bowl. Auburn takes over, well, what some call Auburn North, Nash Vegas, Nashville. We will talk about the matchup, yes, between Auburn and Maryland, but we're here mainly to talk about Auburn's history with the Music City Bowl and all that encompasses that. And there's some really great history to discuss in that. With me today to discuss things when it comes to history and aesthetics, we have from the Auburn Uniform Days, my good friend and yours, Mr. Clint Richardson. What's going on, buddy?
How's it going?
I'm doing well. Excited to be talking about a bowl game for Auburn again. Isn't it nice?
It feels like it's been forever.
It has been kind of in a weird roundabout way. We've not had a secure, good feeling about bowl games, much less being in them for quite some time. I feel like this is the first time Auburn walks into a bowl game and goes, hey, we got a shot at winning this thing.
The question is that because of our team or because of their team?
Well, you could make that case either way. We're not really getting into the whole matchup aspect of it, just going into the nitty gritty of that. We'll talk a little bit, a high level about that. But, with their quarterback being out, some of our DBs being out, I think if you asked whose team is more prepared for the other, you might say, hey, they kind of negate each other. So to me, it seems like a pretty even matchup. A team in Auburn that says, hey, we probably underperformed a little bit. Maryland probably overperformed a little bit in how they competed against the Ohio States and the Michigans.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. SEC, Big Ten, we will definitely talk about that a lot here on E2C Network after the game is concluded. But now let's talk about history. Nashville, Music City Bowl. It's had a lot of sponsors, hasn't it?
God, has it ever? Yeah, out of like the major-ish bowls, and not that Music City is a New Year's Sits game or whatever, but like Music City's been around for a while, but my gosh, has it had so many sponsors. Gaylord Hotels, Franklin American Mortgage Company, and who is it now?
TransPerfect.
TransPerfect. What is TransPerfect?
I believe it is some type of financial services company, which is what, let's be honest, what's half of the sponsors now for bowl games are. It feels like.
Yeah. I mean, you go from a mortgage company to a banking company. It kind of fits. It's a shame that Nashville doesn't have a more Nashville appropriate sponsor though. You can leave all the banking companies in like Charlotte, but they've got Duke Mayo. So
I've got the perfect one. CMT, baby, Country Music Television.
Is CMT still around?
I think so. CMAs, whatever it is, something related. There's got to be a country music label out there that can say, you know what, let's put our label on that. But hey, listen, whoever wants to sponsor it can. I want to mainly focus on Auburn's history of the Music City Bowl. I will say first, Clint, that before reviewing the history, I had it in my mind that we had a much deeper history and longer history with this bowl. Why is that? Why do I feel like we've played in this game more than what will be 3 times after this game?
I don't know. I had the same thought when we faced Purdue a couple of years ago. Just, it's hard to believe that Auburn had only played in it once previously. And I don't know if it's just, growing up in North Alabama, that like Nashville's 90 minutes away. Like it's kind of a second home in some senses. And, there's so much familiarity with Nashville, and I think a lot of Southerners in this area kind of take ownership of Nashville as ours. So I don't know if it's that, but man, it's weird. It does feel like we've played in this game a lot.
Yeah.
But it's only been 3 times.
Yeah, it's only been 3 times, and traditionally this is at least currently an ACC versus SEC, but the Big Ten has been adopted as that third rotational in if needed. So here we are again facing yet another Big Ten opponent, in the Music City Bowl. Last time, or the first time I should say, we played Wisconsin, and the time before that, Purdue. Here we are again playing Maryland, which is really weird because they used to be in the ACC. So no matter how you slice it, it kind of
Just wait
works.
for another 5 years, and conference realignment won't mean anything.
There will not be a conference or a 2 or 3
We
or
will
4.
all be in the same conference.
Exactly. So here, let's dive into that first matchup. Just, high level discussion about this significance of it. This is back and what would be an abysmal year in terms of what the expectations were for Auburn. Ranked number 1 coming in. A lot of people thought that the stable of running backs were going to be there. Auburn was just going to roast everybody, and struggle after struggle happened. But what comes after it is probably the more important thing. But your quick thoughts about the first matchup, Auburn versus Wisconsin in the Music City Bowl.
It was kind of the perfect storm for Auburn to struggle their way through that season and to be able to end on such a high note. A 28-14 victory over Barry Alvarez's Wisconsin team. And we know
Don't say that name.
There you go. We know
I
the fits
cringe.
that man can give this Auburn program. But, Cadillac Williams, Ronnie Brown each scored 2 touchdowns on the day. Jason Campbell had a fantastic outing. And, of course, that's, the end of 2003. And we know what happened in 2004 and January 2005.
Mm-hmm. And here's something that's just popped in my head, and I should have prepped you for this.
Oh, boy.
Wasn't Al Borges coaching with Auburn at this point for this bowl game, or was that after the fact?
I don't know.
I
don't know when he joined.
Part of me feels like that's a yes, because I know there was some hype coming in with him into the season about what he was bringing in. I think what he called the West Coast offense at the time. So you had the storyline of Auburn underperforming in a year where they had Carnell, Ronnie, Brandon Jacobs, Brandon Johnson as the fullback, Trey Smith, that stable running. You had Jason Campbell, wide. You had this amazing team, and especially defensively, and they just fell flat on their face in some regards, but really showed out in this bowl game and took Wisconsin, who's I think it's fair to say it's a power, right?
In
college
they've
football.
had their moments.
Right. And is
good and bad.
Good and bad. And, beat them by 2 touchdowns in the first ever Music City Bowl appearance for Auburn. And with some of the recent bowl history, it's nice to say that we are undefeated currently in the Music City Bowl series, at least. So
yes. And what's special about that first game for me is no, Wisconsin was not a first-time opponent. If you follow me on social media, you know that for me, bowl games really shine when you get to face opponents that 1, you have never faced before, or 2, it's been a very long time since you've done so. And Wisconsin, that 2003 matchup was the first time these 2 teams had met in over 70 years. Auburn went to Madison and drew a 7-7 tie in 1931. Shug Jordan was on that team. And, again, that's been a very long time coming. It's great to see these 2 schools face off again, and of course, face off multiple times since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as that history goes, it's the only win Auburn's got over Wisconsin. But to see somebody you haven't seen in 7 decades is the goal and the purpose of a bowl game.
I would say that we could say to the bowl committee now, enough's enough. We're good. That was
no more Wisconsin, no more Northwestern, and don't you dare put me with Clemson. We will have a fight. I swear.
All right, let's talk about the second one now, because I think there's some interesting storylines here as well. An Auburn football team that probably had some higher expectations given how the first year under Jarrett Stidham at quarterback in I got my years wrong here. 2017, right? Is the first year for Jarrett Stidham. And that second year underperformed again. So you come into this game versus a Purdue team that had overperformed, beating Ohio State that year, and the very special and unique storyline of Tyler Trent, the super fan who lost his battle with cancer. One of the things I remember talking about with that matchup is no matter what happens, Auburn loses here, because we knew that Tyler Trent was, having a really hard time, and that he wasn't going to see very much more of his football team.
Mm-hmm.
And you either beat the kids team or you lose, and Auburn was expected to win that game. So it was kind of, I remember when the matchup came up, Clint, I dreaded it because I didn't see a way Auburn won truly.
Yeah, that was kind of hanging over this game for some people who took that perspective. Again, through my eyes of the bowl game, this was the perfect matchup. Auburn and Purdue had never met before. We're crossing one of the teams off the never seen before list,
Yep.
and thank you, bowl committee. It worked. This is when bowl games shine, and it truly
Yes.
does. And to go out there with so many storylines, like you said, Auburn kind of didn't hit the marks. I mean, to end up in the Music City Bowl, especially for an SEC team, is not a great accomplishment.
Right.
I hate to say it that way, but we all know it's true. They get the fifth and sixth pick in the pecking order.
Right.
It's just how this works. And so a lot of people are going to be disappointed to pull Nashville. And to get there with a Purdue team that has so much goodwill around them this year, great wins over Ohio State, great storyline with Tyler Trent. That's hard. And the Purdue team carried his four special words on the back of their helmet. The black stripe down the center had tenacious, tough, unrelenting, or courageous on the back. And those were all just, Tyler's kind of key phrases. And it also had his T2 signature on it. So like it was a Tyler Trent memorial helmet in a sense.
Right.
And I mean, Auburn just went up there and dominated into a massive win, and it was over in the first 5 seconds. And I mean, there's no way to segue into this, but when I was writing my bowl game preview article, I didn't realize when Tyler passed away.
Mm-hmm.
It was 9 days after this game.
It was, and
it was a very quick turnaround. And I'm not here to say that Auburn killed this kid. Absolutely not. But
no.
You do feel for a kid like that and his family that they had to go out on a game like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it puts things into perspective really quickly when something around that is surrounding that game. And so you're happy for your team in one sense that this is a Auburn team under a Gus Malzahn head coach that's had the reputation of pulling back a little bit, and he didn't pull back, it seemed like, in this game. And I just remember it being just an onslaught from the get-go. Darius Slayton had a really great game as well, connecting with you. It's kind of what launched him into his career into the NFL. I think what got some eyes on him eventually.
I agree with that.
With the New York Giants. So some great things for Auburn in this, and still some great things for the Purdue, even with that, the sad cloud of what would eventually happen with Tyler Trent. It was a special season for them and a good end for Auburn, at least for their bowl prospects. Not much success, as a lot of people will tell you and love to tell you about in the Gus Malzahn era. But here we are many years later. Well, I guess I shouldn't say many. It's only 5 years, doing math really quick in my head.
Oh boy.
5, putting
don't let this guy do math.
It's tough.
Don't let this guy do math.
I did it though. I did it. 2018 to 2023 would be 5. Here we sit, the third overall matchup that Auburn will have in the Music City Bowl again, as we've already addressed, with a Big Ten team. Yes, Maryland is a Big Ten team. That's weird. I think Auburn, from what I understand, is right now, currently, as of recording this, a 1 touchdown favorite. I agree with that, just given kind of what we've already set up at the beginning of the show. We'll obviously, we've talked about that in some other aspects on E2C Network, but Auburn and Maryland don't have a lot of history, but you can share with us a little bit about some of the history that the two teams have, at least, what that we can bring up when we're playing them in this game.
Yeah. And, as we've already said, like, bowl games really do shine when it's a team that you've never faced before. In this case, Auburn and Maryland have faced off 3 times previously, in 1952 in Birmingham, 1958 in Auburn, and then 1983. So it's been right at 40 years since the Terps last traveled to Auburn with stud quarterback Boomer Esiason.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this game was, I think it was a number 3 Auburn team versus number 7 Maryland, and came out to a 35-23 victory for Auburn. And I mean, the stories that I've heard this week of that game, that this is one of the best games anybody has ever watched. You know, Boomer was very special to watch as a player. The Auburn uh, running backs went nuts in this game, and I need to pull up the stat. If
Well, that's not brand new information. Auburn running backs just go nuts regardless.
well, so here, the 3-headed running monster, Tommy Agee, had 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lionel the Train James had
Yes.
115 yards and a touchdown of his own. And the lonely sophomore Bo Jackson, I don't think anybody knows that name,
Nobody.
would add 105 yards on his own.
Mm.
Insane. 400 yards of rushing from these guys. If you're Randy Campbell or Jeff Berger, whoever was quarterback this year, like, you got the easiest job in the world. Just take it and hand it off.
I mean, let's juxtapose that with the first bowl matchup in Music City Bowl, where you had that stable of running backs to work with at Auburn.
Yep.
It's just, it just seems like that Auburn is going to bring a good stable of running backs to the Music.
Back U is.
Yeah, well, I mean, typically that's what we call ourselves. I know some of you other fans out there get offended when we try to claim that, but do you have Bo Jackson? No. That's all I got to say. Bo Jackson.
That's all you got.
But Maryland's got a great history as well with Boomer Esiason. That is a well-known name in NFL circles. And so that alone kind of makes us, even though it's not a brand new matchup for Auburn, not taking anything off of your list, Clint, that you've acquired over the years, it's still cool because it's kind of like the Wisconsin matchup. Let's juxtapose it again. The first time in 70 years happened in the Music City Bowl. Here we are several years later talking about Maryland and Auburn meeting each other in Nashville in the Music City Bowl. So
yeah,
I
like that. If there's any consistency with the Music City Bowl, of course, your on-field performance does not create consistency in order to get to the Music City Bowl.
Right.
But I do like that we've kind of hit this trend of longtime foe, new foe, longtime foe. So, you know, we're not facing Northwestern for the 3rd time in a decade. You know, we're not dealing with that kind of matchup. We're dealing with, you know, this is a good thing. The Music City Bowl has really done well when selecting Auburn and Auburn's opponents, and I, for one, really appreciate that. You know, it's when we went down to Tampa for the Minnesota game, it's 2 team bases that had never faced off before, that have no reason to really connect, and that's what this is for. That's what this is the point of. Like, why else would you go into the middle of Nashville on New Year's Eve in possible snow conditions? Thankfully not this year, but like, why would you sit through, you know, a monsoon at the Military Bowl,
right,
for a bowl game if it, like, it's the matchups and it's the players on the field, but you know, it's the matchup that really sells it for me, at least. I'm looking forward to this one.
The matchup and the history, and I know as a final piece here, we've got to discuss this whenever we have you on the show. We got to talk about the aesthetics portion of this and what will be, I think, in my opinion, a beautiful matchup of uniforms. I mean, is that too far of a stretch to say this is not a beautiful matchup of uniforms?
I think it is, but let's go see our history first.
Okay.
So,
I feel like I'm on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood right now. Let's go take a visit down there. You know, let's say, hey, kids, let's go meet so-and-so down there on the corner and learn about this.
All right, I get it. Well, 1952, Auburn wore blue and Maryland wore red. Give me a blue versus red, color on color, any day of the week. In 1958, Maryland wore white, all white, and Auburn went white, blue, white. And then in the 83 game, it was a red helmet, white pants, and a red helmet, white shirt, and red pants. So you've already had 3 completely different uniform color-wise for Maryland, 3 different uniform matchups between the two schools, and I really thought that Maryland was going to keep it a little bit more simple this year with the bowl game and stick to what has kind of been their primary look this year: red helmet, red
Mhm.
jersey, and white pants. That I think would have been a really good looking matchup against Auburn's all white. You know, if you pay any attention to college football uniforms, you know Maryland's uniform history in the last couple of years. You
Right.
know, I think it was 2009 or somewhere around there. They came out of the tunnel wearing garish Maryland state flag uniforms on the helmet, the jersey. Like, it's loud. You need to go see a picture of it. But ever since then, they've kind of started to settle into they had a hand painted flag helmet, flags on the shoulder, done much more tastefully this time. So I'm glad that they kind of retired that. They're going back to the Boomer Esiason era throwback look with the strip terps on the helmet, simple triple stripes on the shoulders, and 3 stripes on the pants as well. But today, as we record this, Maryland announced that they were going to go with their all black alternate set against
Mhm.
Auburn. So you're going to have all black versus all white, with Auburn with the white helmet, white face mask, white jersey, and white pants. So
Mm.
I've seen a couple of people, of course, people like to call Auburn's all whites the Stormtroopers. So you've got Stormtrooper versus Darth Vader. I know you. I know you. We don't talk about that one. Um, I had some people say in my mentions today that it was good versus evil, and the color's going to be interesting.
Stormtroopers were evil too.
I know, I know. Not so much that, but just the colors themselves.
Right.
If we want to archetype colors, but
Sure. But I'm
yeah,
just saying, like, I love the Stormtrooper look. Just plain and simple. It is, if you're gonna not give me the blue jerseys and all that with it, I gotta have the full Stormtrooper look, like the
well,
white
and
face mask, everything.
the white mask are so good. But also, if we're going back to the history, this will be the first of those 3 matchups in Nashville that Auburn has not worn the navy tops.
Oh, I just realized that. Yeah. And I remember that from the article too now, which is a great segue. It's like I planned it or something. I really didn't. But
You didn't.
in,
Don't give
in all
yourself that credit.
in all seriousness, folks, one of the great things that I think you should do is take the resource of the Auburn Uniform Database, which is run by Clint here. And he's done a great article detailing in more detail about this matchup, the Music City Bowl, but also the bowl history of Auburn and the aesthetics too. So if you want to see what the field looked like in the end zones for these other bowl games, he's got those laid out for
My
you there.
favorite feature on the entire site.
I had a feeling it was for you.
I love it so much.
So go check that out, especially if you enjoyed our conversation here today about the history of the Music City Bowl in Auburn, and then obviously Auburn and Maryland, that integrated into it too. That's a great resource for you to take into account when Auburn and Maryland match up. And of course, later down the road, Clint, when this game is history, we will talk about it and add it into the history of the Music City Bowl. But hopefully, Clint, we're not talking about the Music City Bowl very soon, ever again.
Give me a decade at least, please.
At least a decade. We can have a down year in about a decade. As we head out of here, we'd love to share with you where you can find us on X. You can find me at Kyle Loomis 24. If you would love to talk to me, Clint, where can they find you?
Still gone at Twitter.
It's Twitter, X, whatever.
At ClintAU24 on Twitter, at Auburn Uniforms on Facebook and Instagram, and always check out auburnuniforms.com for the breakdown of the history of the Music City Bowl aesthetically and over 330 years of Auburn athletic uniforms.
You've got a lot of studying to do, folks, so go check that out. And we're excited.
Next week.
Quiz next week. I will fail. But we got a lot of excitement for this matchup, mainly because of the history. And we'll be talking about it again here in the near future on E2C Network. Until we talk to you again, War Eagle.
War Eagle.